Hello. Today I thought I would show you just some tricks to keep your needle from getting stuck um, when you're just sewing through some vinyl and your presser foot too. I think it's really important to know exactly how to make sure that your stitches stay even and you're not getting too small of a stitch that, when you intended it for it to be a little bit longer. I sew with a Juki TL18. It's a heavier machine. It is a straight stitch machine. It's still considered a domestic, but some people consider it to be a semi-industrial just because it's a stronger motor. And it can pretty much plow through a whole lot without being an industrial machine. But it has its limitations. One of the limitations is I can only go up to Tech 70 thread. But that gives me a really nice professional looking stitch length. And appearance in my stitch is really defined, which is why I really like this machine. So I'm going to be using some K.Azcona thread. It's a variegated thread. I have not used this, obviously. I haven't even opened it yet. But I just wanted to show you kind of how I treat my thread first and as I prepare to sew with it. So let me show you that first. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I just unwrap my thread. And I like to treat my thread with some thread lubricant. So this is Bad.Az version of like a thread lubricant. There's different brands that you can get. I like theirs the best. It's very inexpensive, comes in a big container. You can also get a Dritz version called Sewer's Aid. It's a little more expensive, comes in a smaller bottle. This will last you quite a while. I'm only maybe, a quarter of the way through, and I've had this for about a year. So I use a lot of it though, and a little goes a long way. So I normally will just treat my thread with the thread lubricant. I just put some kind of all over my thread, and basically what this does is it kind of absorbs in the thread and helps it glide through my tension discs all the way down into my machine. So I normally just let that sit for a little while and let that absorb. And then I use these. These are thread nets. I got these from Amazon. It's a giant package. I probably had these, oh goodness, at least 2 or 3 years, and I've barely gone through them. So you can buy individual thread nets. I just buy this giant package. I think it was maybe $10, something like that, and it'll last you forever. And I just kind of measure my spool and decide kind of how long I want to cut my tube. This is basically a big long tube, which is in this package. And I just place this over my thread. So I just need to find the end though before I do that. And you just want to feed this through. So this helps your thread from getting tangled and stuck as you're sewing. So it'll be a much smoother experience. So that's what that looks like. Okay, so if you're going to be sewing with vinyl, which I am, you have a couple of options. You can either change out your presser foot to a Teflon foot, or you can use a little bit of thread lubricant on your vinyl and then sew around so that your needle does not stick. I like the thread lubricant option personally, rather than changing out my foot every time. Plus I can see a little bit easier with my presser foot if it's not a Teflon foot. I also want to point out that the foot that I normally sew with is a 3mm hinged zipper foot. I got this from Juki Junkies. The distance from the needle to the outside, either to the right or to the left, is exactly 1/8 of an inch. So when I'm top stitching, in general, I'm top stitching at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And it is really nice because when I have my foot down, it's really easy for me to see all the way around, see in the middle of where that, where my needle is going to be positioned. I find I use my knee lift a lot when I'm sewing, and it's really nice to be able to just lift it slightly and kind of see where my thread is and where my needle is going to land. So besides just being lazy and not wanting to switch out my presser foot, I just prefer this presser foot when I'm stitching rather than a Teflon foot. I find that the Teflon feet are just really bulky. I've tried Teflon feet that have kind of a left and a right kind of positioned hole, one that's in the middle. I like this better personally, and I'd rather just use a thread lubricant that I can just wipe off when I'm done. Okay, so one of the other questions I get asked about is, does this stain and how much do I use? I have never had this stain anything for me. I've used this where it's gotten on some of my cotton, my quilting cotton, the cotton woven fabrics. You know, obviously I put it on vinyl, it wipes off. I will say, because this is like it's like a silicone lubricant, wiping it off completely, you're just going to need to let it sit for a little bit after you've wiped and then wipe it again. So it doesn't stay forever. It will eventually come off, but you do need a little bit of patience with it. When it does get on cotton woven, I've just never had it stain. The only time I've had any type of marking from this thread lubricant is with waterproof canvas. Because it has like a plastic backing, there was nowhere for it to go, and I did end up with a couple of dark marks, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. It eventually went away, but it did take a little bit of time. So in terms of how much, you never want to put too much. I accidentally put too much all the time. Honestly, it's not a big deal. I just try to put a few drops here and there, and I just spread it with my finger. So this is going to stay for as long as you want it on here as you're sewing. So you don't need a lot. You just want a couple of small drops, you know, in different areas of your vinyl. You just want enough so that your presser foot and your needle is not going to stick. Now I am using, underneath this vinyl, there is another type of vinyl. It is a 2D vinyl from Soulful Therapy. It's called a crystallus vinyl. And it's this really cool color shifting vinyl that has a texture to it. On the back, it's soft, so I really shouldn't have a problem sewing through it. But I did want to let you know that it does have, there's a coating on it. It's not super thick. It's just that I am going to have to go through that. So you just want to be aware of your tension is all. I think I have my tension set correctly, but we're about to find out. So if I end up having to stop the video and reworking my tension and redoing some stitches, that is why. I did not have to adjust my tension the last time I used this vinyl, but because I'm only using one layer of vinyl, that's marine vinyl, and one layer of crystallus vinyl, I don't know. Sometimes with vinyls like this, I do need to increase my tension slightly, just so that I don't have any looping on the back. All right, so this is how, like, what it looks like. You can see that it's nice and shiny. That's where the thread lubricant is. And again, you can just wipe it off with a cloth and you should be fine. I just start anywhere when I'm sewing appliques like this. I just make sure that my presser foot is right up against that edge of where I want to stitch. And that'll, again, give me 1/8 of an inch from the edge of my presser foot to my needle. And then I can stitch. I like to stitch pieces like this using a 4.5 millimeter stitch length. That gives me a pretty good stitch length. I do like to start in a down position. I like to hold on to my threads, and then I just can start stitching from there. One thing to note about the TL18s is that, you know, you could end up going real fast with these. I have this on the lowest setting possible as I'm stitching because I just want to be careful and make sure my stitches are exactly where I want them to be and I don't have kind of wobbly stitching. So I will always start with at least one stitch, kind of make sure everything is still lined up okay, and then I keep going. I am going to check just to make sure that my tension is okay. So I'm going to kind of peek to the back and check. And it's looking good, so I do not need to adjust anything. So I'm just going to keep going. Just take your time. There's no need to rush. I know some people are production sewists. They want to get, You know, a lot of these done all at once. I would say with any type of top stitching, if you're going to go slow, this is the time to go slow. Everything else, you know, your construction stitches, anything that's a straight line, you're fine. You know, going a little faster. I think on your curves especially, you just want to be careful. And as you can tell, I'm using my presser foot here. I just keep pressing it up and down to see and make sure that my presser foot's going to land exactly on that edge. So that's what I keep doing. I just keep lifting a little bit just to kind of give myself a little bit of a curve. And anything that's straight, I'm fine. And I don't have to lift. But the knee lift is great. I actually didn't start using a knee lift, gosh, until maybe like 6 months after I got this machine. And after I got really used to using a knee lift, I have never gone back. It's the best thing ever. I can use both of my hands as I'm turning. This is how I get successful curves, is I really go stitch by stitch. Stitch once, lift, stitch. You know, on and on. A lot of people are scared of curves. I get it. I was one. I was definitely scared to sew circle bags. Circle bags, I'm like, no, how do people do this? This is how they do it. Or this is how I do it. I don't know how other people do it. I'm sure there are people that power through curves. I can't do it. I'm not one of those people. So this is how I do it. It just means I go slow. It takes me more time, but I would rather take the time and have more accurate, pretty stitches than have a bunch of wobbly stitches and finish in a lot less time. To me, it's quality is worth it. So here, like this is a tighter curve, so that's why I'm kind of lifting and moving, lifting and moving. Okay, now I'm approaching where I started. So what I normally do is I try to land exactly in the hole where I started. So this is where it can be a little difficult, and I will normally hand crank my way until I can see where that hole is. And it takes me a little bit of time to find it. There it is. And that's where I land. I leave my tails long because I'm going to tie these to the back. Before I do that, I'm just going to grab a little piece of a paper towel that I just have sitting here. And notice it's still shiny. That's okay. It is okay that your vinyl is still shiny. It will eventually dry up and you'll be fine. You just want to get the majority of it off so it doesn't go all over your machine bed. Even if it does, it's fine. You don't really need to worry about it. It's just, I don't want what is essentially like oily substance getting on anything else is all. So I just try to take off as much as I can. But it does leave kind of a nice finish in my opinion. So even if it were to stay like that, I think it's pretty. Okay. So like I mentioned, you're going to flip this to the back and we are going to go ahead and pull our threads to the back and knot them and use a little bit of fray check just to secure the knot. I have something going on over here. I do have all my threads, it's just they're a little tangled. That happens to you, just grab a stiletto and just pull the threads apart sometimes pieces of the thread can get kind of stuck in another piece of thread. And then you're just going to secure with a knot. I like to triple knot. Sometimes I will quadruple knot if I feel like I need a little bit of security. Oops. This is really great thread to sew with. I really like Saya's threads. Is that 3 or 4? I don't even know. I lost track. All right, so the next thing that I like to do is use a little bit of fray check. So this is just the Dritz fray check. It's like glue. So any type of glue should work. I just put it over the knot. I let it dry, and then I move on. When you're appliquing like this, normally I would also trim the excess of the applique so that it was nice and neat. So there you go. I hope that helps. I really, really love sewing with this machine, just with a few little tricks here and there, just to make it a little bit easier on you. You should be well on your way. Join me next time for more tips, some more Bad.Az tips.